I can guarantee I'll be blowing my nose during this video. So I apologize, but the allergies have been pretty wicked today. I don't know why. I very seldom get allergies in the summertime. You know, sometimes a little in spring and fall and whatnot. But anyway, okay. Somebody asked the question about the Euphrates River drying up, and I've done I haven't dedicated a whole video to it, but I have talked about it in the past. But I want to cover that first. I want to talk about Brother Robertson in Provo that was shot and killed by the FBI. This is such a sad thing. It just seems so pointless. Okay, so he wrote some really stupid things online concerning our current president, and in that he was visiting the state of Utah. The FBI took this serious, as they should, but they already had contact with this guy, 75 years old, a very large man, somewhat disabled. I believe he was a ward clerk in his ward, active, and you know, venting, expressing his frustration, but then going too far. Well, I would encourage you to go to Glenn Beck. He's done several videos on these and interviewed people. So you can find on YouTube, just go to Glenn Beck and you'll see him. But here's the problem I have with this, is it appears to me that this was nothing more than, we're going to set an example here. I mean, think of the threats that were given to President Trump by celebrities right out in the open, and not one thing was ever done. You had Madonna saying she wanted to blow up the White House. You had Johnny Depp saying, you know, maybe it's time for another actor to assassinate a president like Lincoln was assassinated by an actor, and maybe it's time to do that again, or something like that. And then you had the no-name red-haired comedian who thought she was, you know, so cool, and she had the effigy decapitated head of Donald Trump. Nothing there, nothing to see there, you know. No raid. So this was 6:30 in the morning, and they rammed you know, they did a flash bomb, and then obviously there was gunfire, and we'll never, I can guarantee two things. We'll never know exactly what happened, and that this will be pretty quieted down in a short period of time. And it'll be as if he never existed. And it's sad, because that's no way for an individual to leave this world unless they absolutely deserve it. And I just don't believe that this should have escalated to this point. I mean, there's so many other ways that, you know, things could have happened. But the body was taken outside, shot in his home, taken outside and left out there with a sheet over it for over 2 hours. Now that's very strange. I think this is to say, okay, you redneck Mormons in Utah, this is the outcome if any of you think of doing this, which is really kind of interesting, because from my perspective, I would say there's more support for our current president here in Utah than probably any Western state, Mountain West state, let me say that. Because, I don't know, I mean, we have apostles that contributed to his, an apostle, I should say, to his campaign and to his re-election. So I think that he gets a lot of support, and I think there's a lot that dislike Donald J. Trump. So anyway, there's my take on that. I think it was an example set. I think another really young man, athlete, died in Texas, and then another one at another university on a football team, killed over dead. It just keeps happening. So we have that. We have the fire in Maui. I've been to that town only once. That burned up. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. And you know, it's interesting how the media immediately goes to global warming, and you know, I don't mind saying that there's global warming. What I mind is saying that man is puny man is the one that's causing it. I would say man is causing it, but not by driving cars or using fossil fuels that come from the ground. They are natural as can be, but sin is bringing about the warming of the earth. It is going to be cleansed by fire. And so the more we participate in sin and sinful behavior, it's going to heat up. That's what I see. So very similar to the days of Noah, and Christ even compares it to the days of Noah. We think of it as it's going to be a surprise and it's going to happen suddenly, which I agree with. But it's also going to be in a like manner. It's going to be brought about because of such extreme wickedness. And I think we're getting there with the alphabet and everything attached to that. I'm not going to do another video on that again. Oh, gosh. But, yeah. So before I get into the Euphrates, Sue ran across this little gem. This is in Jesus the Christ, Talmadge, Jesus the Christ. And, you know, there's some talk. I say this a lot. It's interesting. That's a dead giveaway when I say that. But there seems to be a group of people that cling on to certain things, okay? One is, you know, Book of Mormon geography. Boom, they're on, you know, they're on clinging to a certain place, and I do that. I cling to a certain place, but I'm probably more of a mainstream on that as far as Mesoamerica, and I would say there are fewer people in the church that would go along with the heartland as being the prime location, okay, of the Book of Mormon. Along those same lines, many of those people who care and who study say that in Israel and Jerusalem that the Temple Mount is where the first and second temple was in the city of David, and that the Temple Mount that we would call the Temple Mount was the Antonia Fortress. I totally disagree with saying that the first and second temples were in the city of David. And this is important because we have ancient prophets, we have latter-day prophets, and our current prophet has said that there will be another temple built in Jerusalem. And from here, Christ will reign as King of Kings, Lord of Lords. This will be his headquarters. So this temple is critical, and the location is critical. A lot of people say it doesn't matter, but I think it does. And the Temple Mount is the Temple Mount. The Antonia Fortress is a smaller structure. It didn't house a legion of Roman soldiers. Now, let's just get this understanding. There was no legion. There wasn't a whole legion of Roman soldiers in Jerusalem before Christ or during Christ. They came after to annihilate and track down, anybody, like the rebellion. We have Masada, where they hunted them down there and got them on top of Masada. Been up there 3 times now on top of Masada. It's awesome. That's when the legion came. Okay, so forget about a legion of Roman soldiers at the time of Christ. It just they weren't there. And so this legion came and took over, and they wiped out the buildings on the Temple Mount. Christ prophesied that. He said there's not going to be one stone left on top of the Temple Mount. He specifically said buildings. You can read the accounts. So right now we have the Mount, and there's Herodian stones. There's the archaeology is there. It was built by Herod, expanded, I should say, by Herod, that Temple Mount. And that's where the first and second temples were, and where what we would say the third temple will be. It just fits everything. It fits everything. So the Martin, a guy with the last name of Martin, kind of started this idea that it was in the city of David is where the temple was. And then Carnucci is another guy that's picked up on that, and he's the current guy that does videos and writes books and whatnot. But let's read in Jesus the Christ. It gives us a little hint, a little evidence. This is on page 441 of the book I have, and it's the last paragraph. Some of the people, I'm quoting now, who had been listening to our Lord's discourse reported to him the circumstances of a tragical event that had taken place probably but a short time before inside the temple walls. A number of Galileans had been slain by Roman soldiers at the base of the altar, so that their blood had mingled with that of the sacrificial victims. It is probable that the slaughter of these Galileans was incident to some violent demonstration of Jewish resentment against Roman authority, which the procurator Pilate construed as an incipient insurrection to be promptly and forcibly quelled. Such outbursts were not uncommon, and the Roman tower or fortress of Antonia had been erected in a commanding position overlooking the temple grounds and connected therewith by a wide flight of steps, so that the soldiers could have ready access to the enclosure at the first indication of turmoil. So this is interesting because it actually says that the tower, it was a tower. It wasn't this huge, acres and acres, several football fields size platform. That's not what this was, the Antonia Fortress. It was a small place where they could go up and observe. And this fits perfectly. Right now there's like a school or something. We went in the building or the area where the Antonia Fortress would have been at the time. And it looks right down on the Temple Mount. Now, you wouldn't have this at the city of David. If the Antonia Fortress was the Temple Mount and the temple was in the city of David, you're not going to see or witness or hear anything. It's not a long distance, but it's a far enough distance that the Temple Mount, looking down on the city of David, isn't going to give you any kind of thing. So I just bring that up. You could say, well, Talmage didn't know or whatever, but I think it's pretty interesting. So there you have it. Now let's talk about the Tigris and Euphrates, mostly the Euphrates River. So we have in Revelation 16 and Revelation 9 these prophecies about the Tigris. So it'd be Revelation 16:12, and I keep saying Tigris, the Euphrates River drying up, and then that will allow the kings from the east to cross over and then come in and destroy Jerusalem, destroy Israel. So if you look on a map, there's a map right there. If you look on a map, you'll see that the Euphrates is in Turkey, comes down through Syria into Iraq, and then empties, and then the Tigris joins in, and then it empties into the Persian Gulf in southern Iraq. My son was in southern Iraq, and the one that I did the video a few videos ago on aliens and UFOs and stuff. I'm going to do another video with him. He doesn't know this yet, but he's going to tell us of his experience at Camp Bucca in southern Iraq, guarding prisoners. And it's a really interesting tale, story, experience that he's had there. But this is the region. He was there where this is taking place. Well, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there's been a series of dams built by both Turkey and Syria, really taking the water, several dams taking the water and utilizing it from the Euphrates. And so by the time it gets to Iraq, there's not much left. And of course, just like Maui, just like everything else, it's climate change. And so therefore, because of climate change, you need to stop flying and driving. Only elite are allowed to do that. The rest of us peons, poor people, losers that need to be controlled, we're the ones that are gonna, not be able to use gas stoves and grills. There's a whole bunch of things coming down the pipe, and our fuel costs are we were told that would happen. For us to think that under the current administration in the United States that the fuel prices were going to be what they were under the previous president, Donald Trump, is ridiculous, because the current president told us right off the bat that prices were going to go up to help with climate change. So the two most dangerous things, according to the current president of the United States, is climate change and white supremacy. Those are the two existential threats to this country. Yeah. So, and one of those was going to be to raise or to stop global warming would be to raise fuel prices. So, $4 or $5 a gallon is, fine. And then if you combine inflation, it's just crazy. So there you have that. Okay. So, the prophecy, well, let's go to Revelation 16, and then we'll come back to 9. So the prophecy is, and I'm sorry I'm talking slow and just kind of out of it a little bit with these allergies, but the prophecy is this. So God, this is the heading, God pours out plagues upon the wicked. The nations assemble for Armageddon. Christ comes. Islands flee, mountains cease. Oh boy. Okay, this is verse 12 of chapter 16. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, and the way of the kings of the east might be, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And so, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Now this is interesting because quite often we'll hear of false prophets, kind of just a general term, but this is the false prophet, which I think is interesting. Something that is significant. Could be an antichrist, could be the antichrist, not just an antichrist, okay? And we talked about, Samuel a Lamanite or Samuel the Lamanite, right? So that's where it goes. Now, if you go back to Revelation 9, which I think is really, really good because it talks about, if you look at the heading of chapter 9, John also sees wars and plagues poured out during the seventh seal and before the Lord comes. So isn't that interesting that we have, it's the seventh seal's been opened, but there's events that happen prior to the second coming. So the fact that it didn't happen in the year 2000 is okay. It's still at the beginning of the seventh seal when Christ would come, but not at the start, but in the beginning part of it, right? Okay, so chapter 9, verse 14, saying to the sixth angel which had at the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men. Get this. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. That's 200 million. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire. Anyway, it goes through. So I think this third part of men isn't necessarily the world, but it is the Armageddon battle in Israel, and a third part of the people there are going to die. That's just my opinion on that. We can read about those wars also in the 38th, 39th chapters of the Ezekiel wars. So Armageddon, the Jezreel Valley, Megiddo, it's up north of Jerusalem. It's a beautiful, fertile valley. The valley runs from the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. It's gorgeous. And this just totally makes sense how these assembled armies could come, and they would come from the north of Israel. Even though they're from the east, they would come through the northern part of Israel. Now, and that's what Ezekiel said. You kind of have to put all these together to get the main picture. Just on a side note, isn't it interesting that we say the Middle East or the Far East? Now, why would the Middle East from where? Well, if you look at the map, the Middle East and the Far East are in comparison to the United States of America. So it's just I don't know. It's always from our perspective, you know, as Americans, kind of thing, which is kind of funny. But anyway, this conflict, to have 200 million now. China, I think, has like 2 million full-time military. They're the biggest military in the world. But they have, you know, well over 1 billion people. And so you could easily create an army with a coalition, China being the central one. And then have you know, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Russia perhaps, and all that coming together to come down against Israel. You could see that happening, and then from the south, you know, as well. But you could see that coalition coming down through the north, through the Golan Heights, and just sweeping down. You could see them coming through the Mediterranean as well, and then if the Euphrates is dry, they come that way. The Jordan River Jordan is not much by the time you get to, you know, the Jericho area, just below Jerusalem, and easy. It would be pretty easy to cross that, and then just go right up, and you could literally surround Jerusalem. So these events are going to happen. They're prophesied. We need to believe them, and we need to keep watching, right? We're watchers. We watch for these signs and these things. And the Euphrates River is drying up. You can Google it. You can check it out. It's getting bad. And Iraq is the country that's suffering the most, because that is the lifeblood. It's also interesting that the Euphrates is mentioned right at the beginning of Genesis with the creation, and that's one of the rivers that flows out of Eden. So, yeah, pretty cool. So I think that's all I'm going to cover. I do want to do a video on, I've done one before on this, but on works versus, you know, grace, mercy, and not necessarily verses, but how they work together. And Paul, the rest of the reading of Paul in our reading it to the Romans through chapter 6 this week, really covers it well. But I have my take on that, especially if we tie in 2nd Nephi, where, you know, it's we experience grace after all we can do. I think that's one of the most misinterpreted scriptures in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I could cover that if you're interested. I don't know. There's so many come follow me's. And I don't want to compete with any of those, because I'm not one of those that can do that. But I do have a thought on that. So maybe if I get some time, I'll do it. It might be a little Johnny come lately. But I wanted to get this one out because I just somebody asked about it, the Euphrates, and just some of these current events, things that are taking place. And you just go to the Bible and you read it. It's crazy. Have any of you ever heard of wildfires on any of the islands in Hawaii? You know, there's volcanoes, and so you'll have those kind of fires, especially on the Big Island. But that's a little different than just wildfires, you know, and there's no source. It's like, well, there was some strong winds from a hurricane, and one said some some non-native grasses that caught on fire, and then the wind picked up, and next thing you know, and we're at like the mid-50s of people that are dead, but there's many, many, many that are not accounted for. So that number will probably go up. So gosh, tough deal. Like I say, I've only been there once to Maui, and it's devastating. Fortunately, missionaries were all accounted for and whatnot, but yeah, prayers should be going out to those folks there. All right, that's it. You guys have a great evening or morning whenever you watch this. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.